Oh, artificial intelligence. What a great way to start a heated discussion that has the potential to totally derail no matter what crowd you're in. Before I get into the details about the reasoning behind my personal opinion of AI, especially from a creator's and artist's point of view, I want to already give away the fact that I'm not demonizing it at all. My general position towards it is rather positive. So if you clicked on this video because you want to see me get all worked up about it, like most artists do, this video is not for you. Or it is exactly because of that. That being said, so it's not all rainbows and unicorns for me either. After all, nothing is ever black or white. Not even black work tattoos if we want to get into the scientific details of it. I even already had my personal clash with it when I lost an illustration job to AI about 2 years ago. I was in the midst of discussing a request for some concert stickers when the event organizer suddenly went radio silent on me. When I asked a couple days later what the state of affairs is, they said the state is total completion. Because AI had already done the deed. And it had done so for free, which is indeed much cheaper than I would have been. There was just a minor heartbreak though, because I seriously get it. Even though many people are frustrated over the rise of AI, and that for valid reasons, there are just as many good reasons why to opt for it. AI is a tool, and just as any tool, it was created to alleviate pain. A hammer, for example, was created to alleviate the pain of having to ram nails into the wall with your bare hands. That hurts and takes too long. So a tool that does the job more efficiently is a great way of having our hands in a condition healthy enough to give our fur friend a proper belly rub. But just as a hammer will not get the nail into the wall by itself, but instead has to be used properly by a human to do so, AI also needs to be used properly to solve a problem. In the hands of the right people with the right intentions, AI is an amazing tool that absolutely can make our lives easier by alleviating pains that are absolutely unnecessary for us humans to endure. This world is brutal. We are supposed to deliver outstanding work for peanuts and do so ideally in 5 minutes, fresh out of college. The small increments at which minimum wages are increasing cannot keep up with the speed in which costs of living and especially our rents are rising every single year. Mine increased 5% last July, and I'm counting on at least 6% again next year. This math is just not mathing, and AI might be our only salvation. I don't know how it looks where you live, but the bike path that runs along just next to my building is lined with dozens of tens of homeless people that have sadly now passed the threshold from still barely being able to pay their rent to not being able to pay anything at all. If AI can help you speed up processes, take over repetitive tasks, or streamline your workflow with fast summaries and bullet points, I think it is absolutely fair game, and maybe even necessary to somehow meet unrealistic deadlines, or alleviate the pain of truly mindless assignments that kill you from the inside out. We are not living in ancient Greece anymore where we can sip wine and promenade on the beach all day long, while ruminating about the pros and cons of a hypothetical form of government that will never exist. That's probably a grave simplification, but at least it didn't freeze to death in the Canadian winter, even if they did live on the street. Anyways, loaded topic. The gist of it is that life is becoming more and more unforgiving and less giving. Expectations are getting raised by the minute, while job opportunities and salaries are clumsily being dragged behind. We need a new weapon to fight these very real fights, and AI might be our Excalibur. It's just important how much you use it and for what, and how much you let it influence your ability to think and problem solve on your own. And that influence might be a good reason to actually not use AI. In the hands of the wrong people with questionable intentions, it can be disruptive. And by disruptive, I mean that it disrupts the human way of expression. And with that, it can seriously lessen the emotional and creative effect that our work has. Because AI is inherently unemotional and uncreative. It can artificially hint at things and combine randomly, which can help spark ideas. But those ideas still have to be examined and refined by a human in order to make them be understood and felt by a human in return. If you use AI to do the thinking for you, you will never learn how to think for yourself. If you use it to be creative for you, you will never learn how to be creative yourself. You will never learn what makes for a good design and why, what makes for an interesting philosophical exploration and why, and what makes for a good punchline and why. AI lacks real life experience, emotion and intuition, crucial key components of human connection that make living a fruitful endeavor for every everyone involved. And if you are not capable of processing these human curiosities on your own yet, then I would argue that using AI for that purpose will hinder your capacity to interact with your human environment immensely. Internalization is exactly that, internal, and not something external and artificial. It can be sparked and developed by something external, but it still needs to be your own inherent and personal process at its core. In order to abstract and simplify a process, we need to first learn how the process works in its entirety, to be able to know when it is okay to use a crutch. Think about Picasso. Picasso didn't start his career with Cubism. He actually knew very well that eyes don't sit on top of each other. These are all paintings of Picasso from before he started to let loose on the canvas, making sure that he understood what it means to paint a functioning human body that actually would be able to breathe and walk. Just after we understand what it means to create a proper painting, or a piece of literature or a dissertation, we can know when it is safe to use AI to simplify the parts that don't necessarily need our human intervention. Which brings me back again to when to use AI. I'm a pragmatic and down-to-earth artist, meaning that I not just frolic around with crayons all day long for my personal amusement, but instead I see my creative work as a means to improve my career and a means to get my daily bread and butter and invest into my future through the money I earn with it. My time is valuable and very limited. I need to make the best of it and take shortcuts when it is safe to do so, in order to have more time for the things that are truly important for me to work on myself. I personally wouldn't use AI to create a finished product where creativity is concerned, because it lacks the human nuances to create something meaningful and truly interesting. But I do use it when I'm either stuck in my way of thinking and my own ruminating leads to nowhere, when I have the feeling that I'm missing an aspect of a topic I'm exploring, or just to jumpstart my own creative juices when I'm at the beginning of a project and don't know where to start. I don't have the time to ponder for days on end over things that AI might be able to solve in an instant for me. I have better things to do, like fleshing out those ideas with all my expertise to arrive at a worthwhile end product. And the way AI helps me there is exactly through the things that actually make it a better creator: its detachment and its caprice. These two things give AI computations a certain randomness that very often can make you see things from a perspective you might have never gotten at without it. To get more precise with that, here are the exact ways I'm using AI. I use it to brainstorm about visual ideas in words, which is useful for me because my creative process is not just influenced by pictures. My imagination is sparked through many things, and very often it's actually words that make me see something. Chit-chatting with AI can help me loosen up my mental blockages and get that inner dialogue started that I sometimes need to get a better grasp on my own ideas. I also use AI to dive deeper into an idea that I, for example, have read about and that made me think. For example, if I don't agree with something in a philosophical book and I want to find out if my reasoning behind my disagreement is flawed or not, ChatGPT accesses the internet as a whole in a matter of seconds. And that is a huge advantage when trying to get an overall grasp on very complex topics. Furthermore, I sometimes use it to ask me questions, to gain clarity about insecurities I have, often in professional but sometimes even in personal matters. AI isn't your friend that always takes your side, even if you were the one being indecent in public. It doesn't take account of your feelings. It's a very dry conversation partner, and that can sometimes be exactly what you are missing when trying to work out complicated feelings. And finally, I find it very practical to help me figuring out a roadmap to achieve certain objectives. I have ADHD, and with that kind of brain, you get sidetracked massively all the time. It's not so much that I'm not able to stay on track with projects, but rather that I don't even have a track to begin with. AI is easily able to give me a track that I can then stay on. And if I'm not sure how to go about the specifics of a task, I can ask AI that too, and it will answer. Now, I want to mention at this point that I do have friends, and incredibly intelligent ones at that. I of course love to discuss my ideas, issues and roadblocks with them as often as I can. But since my friends are human, they have their own obligations and occupations and rents to pay. And thus they can't always drop everything just to entertain me with their wisdom. And at the end of the day, they might be just as stuck in their human way of thinking as I am. So that's where I can come in handy. Emphasis on can. I very often hit roadblocks when philosophizing with AI. Because again, it doesn't think with emotion and creativity. It can get stuck just as much as me, but it does so rather in paleness and lack of nuances, meaning that its thinking capacity is quite limited to theoretical and almost clinical information it finds on the internet. And then it often goes in circles or asks me questions that don't latch all that well to the subject matter. These limitations are, once again, something you must learn how to spot beforehand through hard-earned real-life experience. because there are still many situations in which not to use AI. A finalized project is something I would never leave to AI. If you don't understand why by now, I'm urging you to start the video again from the beginning. I think it does a good job at giving you a base to work from, but the final touch needs to be the touch of a human, period. I would also never use AI to do all the work for me. It's great to summarize things, to give a rough overview or a first draft of something, or to help out when you hit a wall, but I don't think it's able at all to arrive at something well-rounded completely on its own. I have made tests where I asked it to write a whole script for me, and the results are usually boring as hell, because they lack the implementation of real-world experiences, and they have a lot of repetition in them. AI doesn't really seem to be able to realize that something already has been said before, just in different words. Thus, AI will never write a script for me, period. Quality control and fact-checking also still needs to be done by a human who has seen things interact with the real world to make that thing accessible and understood by the real world. Let's not forget that, for example, ChatGPT's rate of accuracy is 87.8% at the moment, because it cannot distinguish between fact and fiction. That is a big margin of error right there, and that misinformation needs to be addressed by someone with a real brain, period. Then there are university papers. This is a very tricky topic. Keeping in mind everything I just mentioned, it is crucial that you write your essays yourself to learn how to think for yourself. But I know from people in my circle that the education system is not what it used to be, which I will not explain any further in this video though, because it's already getting too long. If you are a student, you probably know what I'm talking about. I just read somewhere that a professor made his students write a paper with AI on purpose, and then analyze where it did well and where it didn't and why. I think that's a good way of going about it in our modern times, as AI is here to stay, and we need to teach people how to use it properly, and to spot and acknowledge its limitations. Now, as you can see, I'm going back and forth here. Why to use it, why not to use it, when to use it, when not to use it. And that's because you have to constantly weigh its pros and cons, and decide for every task in particular, whether it is a good tool to use or not, and to what extent. Is it a nail that needs to go into the wall, or a screw? You can get a screw into the wall with a hammer, but it's going to be messy. There is no generalized answer to this, and that's the reason for me being in both camps, jumping ship constantly depending on the situation. Now, after exploring the pros and cons of AI, I would like to lastly touch on a very touchy aspect of it that has been the point of heated online debates and even lawsuits for a while now. And that touchy topic is the usage of real-life artists' work to train image creation AI. I have no fixed opinion about this at this point in time. Some problems are so complex that it is necessary to read and think about them over a prolonged time to come to a personal conclusion. What I would like to give though is some final food for thought. The biggest pain point of visual artists is that companies are plagiarizing off of their work to create images. It is a fact that when you use an image creator like Midjourney, the result you get is in part a collage of existing works of real artists. Sometimes the signature might even pop up, and they sure as hell haven't given their consent for that. But now, let me say something here. That's exactly what humans are doing. First of all, we copy, of course, from nature. That's a given. Nothing you see in visual arts is new. None of it. But it goes further than that. When someone learns how to draw, for example, it's standard procedure that they start with copying their idols. It's a very natural process where we try to imitate what we love in order to, at some point, arrive at something uniquely us. And for many people, this process of copying sadly never stops. A lot of tattoo artists are blatantly taking existing work from Pinterest to use as is on clients. A lot of painters are using photographs from complete strangers for their work without asking. A lot of professional and even well-known artists are simply copying work from past generations to try to recreate the fame and sales numbers from way back when. A good example for that is Damien Hirst, whose works achieve groundbreaking prices at auction, with 13 million US dollar being the highest so far. His ideas are all stolen. Hirst is even copying himself. Fragments of Paradise, The Void, Lullaby Spring, and Lullaby Winter are basically identical, and they all sold for several $million. Sometimes I really wonder why I'm beating myself up over not doing the same thing twice. But there are so many more. You see these paintings? Every single one of them has been painted by another person. And yes, they all try to piggyback on Warhol. And yes, Warhol has never asked Madeline if he can use her photo. And also let's not forget about Picasso once more. That rascal made stealing ideas a thing. The quote he is known best for is, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." Do you see how he isn't mentioning original creation at all? It's not inventing or stealing, it's copying or stealing. Pablo shamelessly stole from his exploited and abused muses, from other artists like Cézanne, Goya, Matisse, and Rembrandt, and presumably from his students too. He didn't even try to hide it, and still he's being celebrated today. When you create a work of art, you can rest assured that someone will either take parts of it to train themselves to become like you, or that someone will use the whole thing as is to put it on dropshipping shirts for their Shopify store. I truly think that being stolen from is part of the job description of a creative, and you have to get over it as soon as you make your first brushstrokes. I know it's frustrating, but it is what it is. And I think the best you can do is to not become that thief yourself, and stay as original as you can without beating yourself up over it at the same time. Because at the end of the day, the vast majority of people will be able to distinguish the creator from the fraudster. And that's the loving audience that you want in your house, not the leeches that suck out your life spirits. Let them be leeches somewhere else. Or see it as a compliment even. If someone steals your work, they obviously think it's totally worth being stolen. Isn't that nice? At the end of the day, you have to decide for yourself whether you want to tackle a task on your own and reap all the benefits from learning how to problem solve as a human, or if you want to sacrifice the wisdom that comes with human failure and growth pain to have more energy for the things that matter more to you in the moment. I think both are valid, as long as you don't forget that real happiness comes from interacting with the real world that is inhabited by real people with real dreams, and as long as AI doesn't rob you of your ability to stay curious. Thanks for watching. This video script was written almost entirely without AI. The tainted 2% were me asking ChatGPT what it thinks its biggest flaw is when communicating with humans, just for the fun of it. If you appreciate the fact that my contribution to the world is made largely with my own grey matter, then I would greatly appreciate a like and subscribe. I guess this is the hammer equivalent to good AI prompting. Well, that sounded a bit more aggressive than I intended to. You were so cute. Oh, old man.